A federal judge in Washington, D.C. just ripped Donald Trump to shreds in what may be one of the most gut-punching rulings to the Trump regime I've seen so far. So what transpired was Donald Trump has issued all of these executive orders attacking law firms like Perkins Coie, Wilmer Hale, a bunch of others. Some of the law firms have responded by filing lawsuits against the Trump regime for targeting them. It's a violation of the Constitution for a variety of reasons. And Trump's trying to make these law firms, based on his revenge and retribution, submit. There have been other law firms like Paul Weiss who have cowardly submitted. They've been humiliated by Donald Trump when he issued public statements. And then the firms were like, oh, he's mischaracterizing what our deal is. Well, you've been played by Donald Trump. What did you think was going to happen? But a number of firms like Perkins Coie, and then on Friday, Wilmer Hale, another firm sued them as well, Jenner and Block. They're doing what litigation law firms should do, sue them. So this case arises out of one of those lawsuits by Perkins Coie, a judge by the name of Beryl Howell, who I'm sure you've heard a lot about, very well-respected judge in D.C. At one point, she was the chief judge in Washington, D.C., oversaw in that capacity a lot of the criminal cases and grand jury disputes that took place when Trump was civilian Donald Trump. She was randomly assigned one of these law firm lawsuit cases against Trump and the Department of Justice, and she issued a temporary restraining order blocking the Trump regime's executive order against this law firm. Should be noted that some of the other law firms who have since sued the Trump regime, like Jenner and Block, filed something called a notice of related case, and saying that because this judge is dealing with the law firm cases, anytime Trump does an executive order now attacking law firms, it all arises out of the same case and controversy type of things. So it should all get assigned to her. So Trump hates her. Trump wants another judge in Washington, D.C., because he wants to judge shop. Now, interestingly, when Trump's attacking Wilmer Hale, the Trump-appointed judge, Judge Nichols, worked at Wilmer Hale. So to the extent there actually may be a conflict that exists there, the only one that may actually exist is the fact that the Trump-appointed judge worked at Wilmer Hale, who may not be able to hear a Wilmer Hale case. But anyway, Trump then tries to disqualify Judge Beryl Howell. She excoriates him in this order. She goes, though this adage is commonplace and the tactic overused, it is called to mind by defendants, Trump's, pending motion to disqualify this court. Quote, when you can't attack the message, attack the messenger. Defendants filed this motion less than 2 weeks after this court issued a temporary restraining order barring defendants from enforcing against Perkins Coie LLP, that's the law firm, 3 of the 5 sections of that executive order, targeting law firms with punitive measures due to the law firm's representation of clients whom Donald Trump dislikes or who sought relief through litigation that Donald Trump opposes. When the U.S. Department of Justice engages in this rhetorical strategy of ad hominem attacks, the stakes become much larger than only the reputation of the targeted federal judge. The strategy is designed to impugn the integrity of the federal judicial system and blame any loss on the decision maker rather than the fallacies in the substantive legal arguments that are presented. The court then goes on to say how Trump is invoking the disqualification statute. And then they go on to say, the judge goes on to say, this reminder about the role of federal courts seems necessary given the opening line in defendant's pending motion expressing, quote, the need to curtail ongoing improper encroachments of Trump's executive orders around the country. This line, which sounds like a talking point from a member of Congress rather than a legal brief from the United States Department of Justice, has no citation to any legal authority for the simple reason that the notion expressed reflects a grave misapprehension of our constitutional order. Adjudicating whether an executive branch exercise of power is legal or not is actually the job of federal courts and not of the president or the Department of Justice, though vigorous and rigorous defense of executive action is both expected and helpful to the courts in resolving the issues. She goes on and on and on, but Harry, I think you get the point there. She's saying, you don't understand the Constitution. I'm not recusing myself, and y'all are not acting like lawyers who appear before me. You're acting like clowns. Harry, you were a clerk for 2 Supreme Court justices. You were a deputy assistant AG, 4th floor DOJ. You were the top federal prosecutor in the Western District of Pennsylvania. Have you seen orders like this? What do you make of it? And what's your perspective given your experience?
Yeah, I was just quickly canvassing my mind. I've seen judges be really tough on the bench, but to actually reduce it to paper like this. And to me, Ben, this opinion was such a breath of fresh air. It's true that with certain charges about whether this statement she made or that reflects bias, she hits back hard. But what she really does is both explain the stakes, how it really attempts to impugn the integrity of the entire federal judicial system, and what complete trash it is. In these, Trump will go and say something terrible about Boasberg, and his most ardent followers will just take that as a given. And then there'll be all these people in the middle who'll say, well, yeah, he says that. And probably Democrats do the same thing. And I'm sorry, it's just wrong. And all the, cases brought against the protesters, the very ones brought against Donald Trump, they absolutely adhere to professional standards, and everything they're doing now, most recently, the indication not trying to look into the very possibly criminal actions of sorry, I always get this wrong, Hegseth, is that, completely they are in the tank. So what I really liked especially about it is her, pointing out, what's the standard here? Why are we judging? It's the facts and the law, that same old saw that you hear prosecutors say again and again and again. But if a case is the one reason Trump gets beat all the time in the federal courts. We saw him in the wake of the election lose 60 or 61 out of 61 cases. Maybe the federal judiciary hates him. Maybe, just maybe, he brought lousy claims, being in a lousy position and throwing anything against the wall. And trying to recuse her is just that. And rather than, she does very forcefully push back, but she really calls him out and calls out the consequences of these. He's just completely unabashed about lying and saying anything. And in an attempt, what's he really after? What's he been after? What's his fondest mission for several years? To try to somehow, undo the judgment of history about his having stolen the election, which he still insists that he hasn't. So Howell does go through. Here's all the times I've ruled on the other side, but she basically makes the point that any sane person should understand. Maybe the cases go against him by judges because they're lousy legal claims, as in fact they are. For that reason, and in the middle of all the kind of, sharp counterpunches, that kind of theme shone through to me in a way that I thought really was, yes, that's the point. We have to remember that, one side is lying about weaponized prosecutions and the like. The other side is telling the truth. That matters. And here's the side that's telling the truth, and here's the side who's lying.
She goes through basically defamatory statements that are being made about her, because these are attacks on her reputation. And then she, though, says, look, this is more than just me. This is what you want to do to all judges. When the ruling doesn't go your way, this way you whine about it. And then you say federal courts don't have a role. So let me explain to you, what our role is. The interesting thing is going to see, with these executive orders where Trump has attacked all of these law firms, almost all of these judges, Trump appointed judges, George W. Bush appointed judges, Obama judges, Biden judges, Reagan, you name it, they've worked at these firms, and these firms are often, they're competitive, but often also collegial with each other. And Trump's attack on the legal profession, look, Trump's going to appoint bad judges going forward. They're going to look like Hegseth. They're going to look like Bondi. I mean, we're going to have the worst judiciary coming up. That's for sure. But the judges who are there right now, even Trump appointed judges from administration one, yes, there's maybe 4 or 5 awful, but the others are fairly still law and order, normalish kind of judges with experience and qualifications that you would expect. It's a handful that are like completely unqualified, but these are law and order people. So Harry, the existing crew of judges seems to be not with this type of stuff. I could be misreading it. What do you think?
No, I don't think so. They really have. This has been the guardrail that's in place. They've really been holding it magnificently. Something like 82% of all Republicans have ruled against them and 84% of Democrats. And the reason is these are not remotely close claims. What he's doing is so flagrantly, unlawful, excessive, entrenching on Congress's prerogatives and the like, that, you really need a judge. I think he sort of had one in the DC circuit. In the case I just talked about, there was a dissenter, but you really need a judge who is, we knew one down in Tampa, Florida in the last 4 years, who's really just thinking, how can I hold for Trump? But otherwise, I would think a Trump appointee on a lot of very close cases could go the other way. There could be a divide. But these are really easy cases because he brings really garbage claims, and he does it again and again. And the definition he's trying to pound into people's heads is rule against Trump, you're a liberal lunatic judge. There's no other fact out there that people can fasten to. And as you say about Boasberg, everybody in the legal system knows that's a trash argument. He is completely respected. But you've had now even members of the Senate stand up and say, oh, he's being an activist. They couldn't say the first thing about what the ruling even is. So defeating this notion that a ruling for Trump necessarily means you are, that's the kind of prism that a Donald Trump would have. I just want to know, is he for me or is he against me? I don't care about laws, etc. That's his viewpoint. The viewpoint we should have, and most judges still do have, is what's the law say? What's the facts say? They might have good faith disagreements, but they don't come to the fore when you're bringing garbage claims.
Make sure you all subscribe to the Talking Feds YouTube, Talking Feds podcast, and Talking Feds Substack. It's where I get my legal news from. Subscribe to each of those Talking Feds properties, YouTube, Substack, and the podcast. Harry Litman, thanks as always.
Thank you as always, Ben.
Everybody hit subscribe and let's get to 5 million subscribers.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.